Hi, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Ali Tamashiro, and I am the marketing manager here at SpotMe. Today, we have our CEO, Pierre Matrailer. Hi, Pierre.
Hello.
And we also have our guest speaker, Nick Barber, who is a senior analyst at Forrester. Hello, Nick.
Hi, everyone. Hi, Ali. Hi, Pierre.
Well, video has become one of the most powerful forms of content because of its ability to engage emotion and bring that engagement to users. Today, we are going to hear from the expert, Nick Barber, and learn how to leverage video at events, not only to just engage your participants, but also to turn your customers into advocates. But before we get there, I just want to let you guys know that this webinar is going to be about 30 minutes long. We're going to have plenty of time for Q&A, so feel free to ask any questions, and we'll address it at the very end. But before we start, I'm going to hand it over to Pierre, who's actually on site with one of our partners at Asheville Meetings and Events. To you, Pierre.
Hi, Ali. Thank you. So I'm very pleased to introduce Nick Barber. Nick is a senior analyst at Forrester who specializes in video technologies within enterprises and for customer experiences. Nick's research centers on how companies can use video platform for sales and marketing operations and how they can enhance their business using video collaborations. For decades, Nick has shaped the content creation and video strategies to companies like IDG News, and we are thrilled to have him here today to share his expertise with you. Nick, over to you.
Thanks, Pierre. Thanks, Ali. And thank you, everyone, for joining us both in person in London and online. I'm really excited to be here. And as soon as I share my presentation, we can kick off and get started. So thank you again. Today, I want to focus on how do we make user-generated content a strategic asset? And I'm an analyst, a senior analyst at Forrester. For those of you not familiar with Forrester, we're a global market research company that helps companies in the Fortune 2000 win, serve, and retain customers. So what do I have to do with video? Well, it's a specific coverage area of mine. And I also come from the practitioner space where I used to create and produce videos for a global news organization. So I want to start with a statistic that comes with our technographics research. 86% of brand marketers continue to invest in content development. They understand that content is a great way to drive emotion, enable memory. But one of the problems with creating all of this content is that half of your buyers call brand content useless. They're saying it doesn't hit the mark. They're saying that marketers deliver too much information to sort through. So what could we do here? Because marketers are spending a lot of money on content, but we're realizing that about half of that content, half of that budget is actually going down the drain. So what can we do here to drive better engagement with the content that we're creating? First off, I want to turn back to our data, and you'll notice that a lot of the content and a lot of the themes that run through this presentation for the next 20 minutes or so is really data-backed. It's research, there's evidence here, and I want to present that to you. So first off, content is king. When we ask decision makers, marketing decision makers, which of the following are your organization's top content priorities for the next 12 months, they responded that they want to better understand customer needs. If they can better understand customer needs, they can create content that better fills that gap, that better resonates with their customers. They want to develop new content. They want to create more rich media content because they know that things like images and video are a great way to drive engagement and deliver information. They want to develop a customer-created content program. So they know that user-generated content is really, really authentic. And if you can leverage that, you're standing a much better chance in terms of engaging your buyers and prospects. So I want to open it up here so that we can get a sense of who we have in the audience. And we want to throw out this poll And we want to understand, where are you in your video journey? So go ahead and take this poll for the next 60 seconds. I'll run through the possible responses here. We're not doing a lot of video right now, but we want to get better at it. We currently produce video and have a small team that helps produce and manage it. We're actively creating video content several times a week, and we use high-level metrics to gauge success. Or we use advanced analytics and integrations with CRM and marketing automation to gauge video success. So from kind of just getting started on your video journey to really being advanced on that video journey, go ahead and take this poll question so we can understand where you are. All right, so we've got the poll results back, and it looks like a lot of you, actually 65% of you, aren't doing a lot of video right now, but you want to get better at this. While we sort of see a couple of people sort of in that mid-level range where you're producing video, but you want to get better at understanding its performance. So this is great. And actually, the fact that I see that our audience skews a little bit more towards kind of the beginning of the journey, I'll make sure that we address some of those concerns and some of those questions in today's presentation. So again, turning back to our data, we understand that user-generated content is an important component of content in general. In fact, 38% of US online adults rely on recommendations from friends and family when making purchases. That's a kind of a form of user-generated content. And we know that when you're looking for recommendations from family and friends, one of the things that's sort of adjacent to that is that idea of user-generated content. And user-generated content is really powerful, as we're going to see from this data. So when we asked, what are the types of online videos that consumers watch? The only thing that outpaced amateur or user-generated online video content is music videos. So, the Lady Gagas, the Justin Biebers of the world are outpacing our user-generated content, but that is right up there in terms of the types of videos that customers and consumers want to watch. So we're on to something big here with this idea of user-generated content. And through the remainder of the presentation, we're going to give you some tips and tricks on how can you leverage user-generated content and what are some of the use cases for it. So why video? Why is video something that you should invest in? You probably all know that video is really powerful, but I'm going to give you some metrics and some data here that'll help you build the business case inside of your organization to help invest in video. So we found that video is among the top 5 forms of content where buyers prefer to get their information. They like video because it's something that can take a very complex idea and simplify it. It's also something that can deliver a lot of information in a relatively small package. We also found that video appeals to all generations. So we asked, please indicate how important it is for a retailer to offer the following on its website: videos of products. And we found that the engagement rate on video was relatively the same across all of these generations. So when we think that, yeah, millennials want video, that's true. They actually over-index versus all of the other groups in this survey. But if you look at it from Gen Y all the way up to the golden generation, video is something that customers are looking for. It's something that engages them. It sort of turns on a specific element inside of their brain as they engage in that content. An authentic video is something that's really important for memory and recall. When we can create authentic video, I'm talking about this sort of user-generated content that we see regular people, we see people who are like us, not some slickly produced brand commercial. But when we start to see video that's produced by people like us, we see that as an authentic video. And that authentic video creates an emotional impact inside of us. And when we can turn on those lights for emotion, memory and recall is something that also is impacted. And when memory and recall are impacted, that means that people are more likely to think about your brand when they have a challenge or a problem that they need to overcome. And events are a critical UGC component. So events gather key stakeholders in a single physical space for a defined amount of time. Events are episodes in brands' greater stories. So don't think of an event as kind of a moment in time, but think about how can you leverage that event to basically deliver marketing and deliver content for almost a whole year's time. And events create content that should live on in other formats. So video is a great way to capture the emotion and the excitement at an event and use it to span, a full length of time, potentially up for a whole year until that event occurs again. So I want to turn to sort of a quick case study here from Jaguar Land Rover. This was something that was executed by Spark Thinking. That's a sister organization to the group that we have in person in London. So thanks for executing on that. But basically what they did was they did two types of videos. They posted event videos and highlights. That's one. So these were messages from executives, teasers of upcoming sessions and activities, as well as highlights from the day. They also did a second kind of video where they had groups take an everyday object and think of a new use for it. And these groups then shot a short film advertisement for the product, and participants would vote on their favorite video by liking it inside of the app, and the video with the most likes would be declared the winner. So this was really powerful from aligning new employees by sharing values, visions, and goals. It also used video to unify a culture and use those video highlights and the team challenges to create a tighter knit group as these companies were onboarding. So really cool use case from Jaguar Land Rover. I want to jump into another use case as well. A multinational hospitality company held a leadership conference in China. And specifically here, there were, again, two forms of videos that were developed here. There were moments, so where the delegates were able to share moments that they had during the entire event through pictures that were displayed on a big screen during the coffee breaks and things. This is something that really established a sense of community. So the images and the videos that were shared created a shared experience. And when you can create that shared experience, again, you're leveraging this idea of emotion. And when you can leverage the idea of emotion or the power of emotion, you unlock a really cool, a lot of cool things inside of an organization. And the second kind of video was called the Dine Around Challenge. And this was an icebreaker for the group. The leaders split into 35 teams, and they were invited to try the top 35 restaurants in Shanghai. And the best group picture or video that was posted in the feed won a prize. So they really leveraged this idea of rich media. You can see some of the videos and some of the images there in the slide. But they leveraged this idea of a shared learning experience, again, impacting this idea of emotion. And it's something that really impacted the culture at this hospitality brand. So what are some of the next steps? We've talked about why video is important. We've talked about the use case of video. We've talked about building the business case. What are some next steps that you, following this presentation and you in that room in London, can take back to your organizations to start to put into practice? Earlier in the presentation, I found 65% of you were very sort of early on in your video journey. So let's talk about what you can do to kind of move the needle on that video journey. First, one of the things I wanted to do was dispel the myths of video content creation. Oftentimes we hear that video really needs complex equipment. And yeah, that was true 5 or 10 years ago, But today, all of you are carrying literally a TV station in your pocket. You've got your smartphone, which allows you to go live anywhere you are. It allows you to record high quality video and audio wherever you are, and also the ability to share that video content out almost immediately. So the complex equipment, you don't necessarily need anymore. We literally have TV studios in our pockets. Second myth, video needs to be heavily scripted. I've found that the video that really resonates with buyers and prospects is, again, that authentic video. And when you want to produce authentic video, scripting it, writing out a complex script that needs to be rehearsed and memorized, that creates video that isn't authentic. So some of the best video work isn't scripted at all. If you want to go in with an outline, some bullet points of an outline, that's a great best practice. But scripting it by writing out all of everything that needs to be said, that's sometimes a little bit too much, that creates a little bit too much overhead for the people who are trying to be involved with that. And also, video has limited channels for consumption. You know, a couple of years ago, we used to think that YouTube was the only channel on which people would watch video. But now we know that brands have their own video channels. They've got video delivery through apps like SpotMe and like other apps out there. So they can be embedded into those event apps. Also webcasts and webinars like we're on today. So there are a lot of avenues to deliver video. So how do you inspire meaningful user-generated content? Specifically ahead of an event, you want to make sure that you market your user-generated content campaign to raise the awareness that it exists. So you want to make sure in your email communications, you let them know, hey, we're doing this user-generated content campaign, either at an event or alongside an event, and we want to invite you to produce video for it. You want to create seed content to show users what you're looking for. This acts as a guide for other users who are creating content so that they don't have to start from scratch. You want to offer guidance, either in the form of a prompt or a question for creators to use. So maybe you pose a specific question for them, or you create a prompt for them that they can engage with. And then you also want to gamify the experience. So I think back to the hospitality example that we presented just a few moments ago, and they allowed users to vote on some of the videos. Jaguar Land Rover, same thing. They were voting on some of the videos that they thought were the best. So that's what I mean by gamifying the experience. It's a way to really create a sort of competitive environment around creating these videos. You want to drive adoption of this user-generated content campaign. So at events, for example, consider creating a dedicated space for content creation. Think of like a photo booth, but for video. So you have sort of a dedicated space that's lit properly. It maybe has some branding behind people. It could potentially even have some props for creating that video. You want to make sure that during the event you highlight great content. So we talked in one of the examples about how the images and videos were shown during coffee breaks. That's a great best practice around generating this this excitement around the video experience. You want to make uploading content easy. So it should be embedded inside of the app. It shouldn't be a process where you have to jump around. And you also want to limit moderation or preview, because when people post content, they want to be able to see it. They want to be able to promote it. And when you do a lot of moderation or preview, you delay that process of getting the video out there, getting it socialized, and things like that. So you really want to limit moderation and preview, especially if you're in an event environment where the app and the content in there is private. There's really a sort of a very small need for that moderation and preview. So let's take a look at another company who is using video. This is a cosmetic company that's using video as part of its learning platform. And again, they're using two different types of video in their experience. One is video podcast training. So they replay podcasts and rate them through the app. And they also show a training calendar that lists upcoming sessions that users can attend, as well as past sessions that they can replay. And the second is a community feed. So they're sharing training experiences, whether it's in small workshops or live events, feedback, interviews, product launches, and more. So it's a great place to communicate and collaborate with other team members. And again, we create this shared learning experience. That's one of the things that video is really great in doing. So I want to talk, before we open it up for questions, I want to talk about this idea of digital transformation. And our Forrester research shows that 55% of firms are currently undergoing digital transformation. Something like 15% already think they're digitally transformed, but digital transformation is a journey, it's not a destination. And I use the analogy of a sailboat. And if you've ever sailed on a sailboat, you know that you can't sail directly into the wind, or else you're not going to get anywhere. You sort of have to go in this zigzag as you go upwind. And as you tack the boat, as you turn that boat through the wind, you have to build up momentum. Because if you don't build up momentum, you run the risk of getting that boat stuck upwind. And what happens is you actually don't make any headway. And after a while, you'll start to get blown backwards. So as you move towards this idea of digital transformation, you've got to build up the momentum inside of your organization to execute on it. So first, you've got to make user-generated content a component of your overall content strategy. Figure out where it fits. Does it fit in a learning environment inside of the organization? Is it something that you want to deploy at your events? Consider where it's going to fit. You want to offer guidance at a minimum or framework for more complex options. So I like to call this being flexible within a framework. So especially at events, you want to offer that prompt or offer some guidance. So you want to create a framework for what you want this video to look like. You want to identify change management agents. So inside of organizations today, you've got change champions and change agents. You want to identify them. So a good way to figure that out is who in there is producing video already, or who has a propensity to produce video. Maybe they've experienced producing video at a previous company, or maybe they have some special training that makes them good at producing video or creating really rich content. Start to leverage them, look to them to start to get the ball rolling on creating the content. And lastly, it's around using artificial intelligence to drive efficiencies, especially when we see organizations that have really large libraries of content. AI is a great way to surface some of the tagging there. And when you surface some of the tagging, you can start to create a web of content where you can refer users to other types of content that might be relevant. So, where AI used to be something very early stage a couple of years ago, it's now kind of moved into the mainstream around tagging content and surfacing metadata, and even doing an automated transcription of content so that you can enable it for search. And with that, I wanted to thank everyone for their attention. Hopefully you've got some things to go back to your organization and say, hey, we need to make the business case for this, or here's how we can move along the path of maturity and get our user-generated and our video content campaign going. And with that, I want to turn it back over to Ali and Pierre. I think we've got some questions that we want to start to address.
That's right. Thank you so much, Nick. That was great. I do have some questions that have come in, and everybody else, if you have other questions, please feel free to go and write them down. I mean, you have here our analyst from Forrester and our CEO who could answer as many questions as you want, because we have plenty of time. So the first question is, you were talking about inspiring, meaningful user-generated content. How do you encourage participants to post these videos, to even create that video? I mean, it's kind of a little bit difficult. So, Nick, I'm going to go with you first, and then Pierre, you can follow up with that.
Yeah, so I think it's all about this idea of creating a framework or creating something that these users, customers, event attendees can look to as a way to kind of model their video. And then eventually the video that you start, that seed video, takes on a life of its own. And there's, off of that, there's kind of different permutation, there's kind of different changes that users, just based on their creativity, can leverage. So I think it's, creating that framework after which people can model their video. Over to Pierre.
Yeah, so, well, thanks, Nick. I think it's not only creating a framework, but I would like to add, creating a high stake framework. I mean, this is about my voice, this is about my face, this is serious business. And I don't want it to be, for something that is not important. So if you can create that high stake context, and so as you said, you frame it, but you make it very important. This could be an elevator pitch to present your project. This could be, cascading your messages to your team as you're going back from the event, back to the office on Monday. This could be a personal commitment for change. If we're talking about, leadership and leadership development, these are all important things. So the higher the stakes, I think the more motivated people will be to participate with videos.
Great, thank you. The next question I have is, how do you identify those influencers? How are you going to get from your customers to your advocates and realize that these are people who want to promote or post videos? Pierre, first I'm going to run it over to give you that question first.
Yeah, so, well, I mean, if you're using a platform, any platform should be able to give you some level of analytics. But I think the idea is to early on to identify the people who really want to talk. And the people who really want to talk are usually easily identified in a Q&A session. Because we know that in the Q&A session, typically you have 15 to 20% of the overall audience who is always willing to ask those questions. And these are, of course, the same people we know who are really ready to go and, record a video for you. And we've also identified that those people, once they've committed to ask a question, then they easily commit to do a video for you. But even better, they're willing to continue to commit later on. After the event, you can use those people to record some extra content that you can leverage post-event to have a longer engagement.
Yeah, I think that's right on. Finding the people who ask questions are great. Also understanding what their activity is like on social media. So are they, if you have a hashtag going for your event, it's very easy to see what the comments are, and you can very quickly identify people who are not just active at the event, but really engaging a greater discussion. So you understand if people are, tweeting at an event or posting images at an event, and they're engaging their own community, you can identify them as a great influencer, people that look to them for advice, thoughts, comments, things like that. So that's one of the ways that you could do it, very easily during your event in terms of finding an influencer.
Great, thank you. The next question that came along is, how do you negotiate the best legal conditions with video agencies regarding the API rights and full usage rights? I'm going to give that to Pierre first.
So I don't know for agencies, but I know that at an event, it's a very legitimate question. If I'm a participant, I may not be an employee of the company running that event. So, if I'm recording my video, is this going to be used in not mine, but someone else in a commercial? Could be this used on social media, could be this used outside of the context of the event. So I think we have been working now with some of our clients to include these opt-in clauses as part of the enrollment into the app. So it will be an extra consent that you provide when you sign up into the platform. Yes, I agree that my image will be, used. Or having those consent form being, signed after. And we can certainly help our clients with some templates that we have.
Yeah, I think it's just reinforcing what Pierre says. It's all about transparency. So, it's one thing if you're going to use the video content just in the confines of the event. It's another thing if you're going to start to use that video in other places and other channels. And I think, yeah, it's just about transparency. So you need to be clear, and your video creators need to opt in where you're going to use that content.
Another question that keeps kind of coming up is based on the limits, resistance, and restrictions, of course. We all have them. So two questions that kind of came along here. First is, should there be any limits and restrictions? And I know in one of your slides you said not. And the follow-up question for that is, well, what are the risks? What can go wrong if that video promotes a disagreement from the message that you're trying to convey? Nick, I'll go with you first.
Yeah, no, that's a real concern. So I think there's sort of a couple of things there. Are we looking to moderate and preview content that, do we want to take content that's offensive or sort of off topic, and remove that from the discussion? Yes, of course we want to do that. But what do we want to do about the content that might sort of diverge from our opinion or the sort of topic that we're discussing? I think that it's a great sort of dialogue, right? The message that you're putting out there, maybe not everyone's going to agree with. Maybe they're going to take a slightly different view on that. So I think the conversation piece and creating that dialogue is really good. I think it's when you sort of devolve into content that you really don't want associated with your brand that might be offensive. That's where you need to take a moderation and a preview guideline, and perhaps take that content out of the feed. But on the other end, it's on the conversation side, that might be something that you want. Not everyone who engages with you is going to be a huge champion, but it's about having that conversation.
Pierre, is there anything you would like to add?
Yeah, so when we talk about videos and video recording and user-generated video with clients, that's the first question. No, we can't do that. And no one will ever say, I'm afraid, but it's very clear that that's fear, losing control. So this is why we always say, hey, there's no problem. You can vet. You can make, people can record videos. They're going to sit in a queue. Someone is going to approve them one by one, and it's going to be fine. We're just going to publish the one. And people are like, okay, I can do that. And then I always pray that, this isn't going to happen, because in reality, you're going to have the first 2-3 people who will start doing that. Then they realize that someone is actually filtering it, and then suddenly it drops. Okay, so I think there is some trust and level of comfort that has to be built, and I think it's great that we offer some of those controls. But in reality, it doesn't work like that. People expect things to be authentic, instant, and transparent. I mean, if there's anyone vetting and rating and ranking, it should be the people themselves, not someone from the legal department. What we are doing though is that some industries are actually regulated. I mean, if I think about some of the scenarios we're having in healthcare, or in pharma, where some of the healthcare professionals are talking about some recent advances. This is regulated, so if someone talks about an adverse effect, it has to be reported to the FDA, etc. So we offer some back-channel monitoring services where someone can go after the fact and sort of see, oh yeah, that's okay, but generally leave it live. Otherwise it simply doesn't work.
Great. I mean, it kind of sounds like what you were saying, Nick, at the beginning of your presentation, that half of the content that people put out is pretty much useless.
Yeah.
And right, if you limit people to continue making this useless content, it's not going to be good for anything. But if you do encourage that, like what you were saying, Pierre, those high stake contexts, then you have that meaningful user generated content that could be used, and restrictions won't really matter when people have a guideline for that. Great. The next question we have, is there an amount of time that a video surpasses where the content loses its value or its message strength?
Yeah, so we get this question a lot. How long should my video be? And it really depends. So I think the important thing to know is, how are you structuring your video? Is it kind of rambling and weaving in and out of topics and jumping from one point to another and not really being cohesive? You probably end up with a 2.5-minute video that sort of jumps from one topic to the other. I think that the important thing is focus. So focus your video, focus your message, and then really aim for, I always say to our clients, more shorter videos are better than one long video. But if you're really looking for an absolute time, I think that some of the time for the videos, somewhere between about 30 and 90 seconds is sort of the sweet spot. If you go much beyond that, you're going to start to see a drop off of audience unless you have sort of a very specific topic that you're capturing, and then you're able to deliver that to that specific audience. But I think sort of a good guideline is 30 to 90 seconds.
And the last question we have, unless more come up, there's, you're building content. People are you've identified your influencers. People are putting out user-generated videos, but there's also, now you also want those interactions, those passive users that are actually engaging with the content. And the question is, how do you build content around what the audience wants, what they're looking for? I'll turn it over to maybe you, Pierre, first.
Yeah, so the one thing that we advise our clients is that video that you capture at an event, because it's authentic, because it's capture in the middle of the action. This is something you can repurpose around the year. You can repurpose during the event. You can use it as a thank you message. You can use it as a recap. You can use it, in our case, you can repost it in the feed. You can use it through the digest and make sure people come back and comment to it. So you have a lot of interactions, whether they're content, whether they're comments, replies, that could crystallize around that video. And then you can for example, the next follow-up event, you can use one of the videos that has been recorded, or the highlights, to seed the conversation so that you can connect events to the greater story, as we see at SpotMe.
Yeah, and I think, from a video production or a video delivery perspective, one of the things we talk about at Forrester is the customer life cycle. Basically, the customer life cycle is the 6 stages in which customers interact with brands: discover, explore, buy, use, ask, engage. And one of the things that we found in the pre-sale process was, as users move further, or as potential buyers move further down the funnel, videos can get longer. And then in the use and ask phase, it's around offering that how-to and the quick start and the tutorial content to kind of get them up and running with the product, service that your company is selling. So I think really it's, looking at that customer life cycle holistically and plugging in video to each of those different stages, because video is not a one-size-fits-all piece of content anymore.
Great, thank you. This question just came in, which it's a kind of a follow-up before that. They're saying that they want video to explain complex ideas, and they don't want it to be biased or be inaccurate, and they don't want it to be also from somebody who knows, an expert that knows the topic. They want it to be user-generated content. Speaking with this funnel, I think, right? If you're trying to create a video that's a little bit more complex, do you see that fitting into a different stage of the funnel?
So usually, what we've found in our research is that this is specifically to pre-sale video. So this is a video that's delivered to prospects. So one of the things that we found was that sort of the most complex or the longest videos were the ones that were right before that prospect converted. So generally, the appetite for longer videos is closer down to that conversion point. So that's kind of where it fits in the customer life cycle. In terms of who do you have producing it and things like that, and where do you source it from? Complex videos or videos that explain complex topics, generally a little bit longer, and also have a much narrower audience. Because it's a complex topic, it's a more advanced topic, you're probably not going to see as high of an engagement with that little piece of video that's super focused and super narrow as you would with something that's a little bit more broad. So my advice there was, for a complex topic that's really going to resonate with a relatively small audience, don't expect it to be something that's going to go viral. So that would be my advice.
Okay, great. Well, I think that's all the questions we have. Thank you both so much for your time. Thank you, Nick. Thank you, Pierre. And I hope you guys have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.